Well, I think it is a blessed day for the Toronto Raptors tanking efforts because not only do you beat a team that was sort of nipping at your heels in the San Antonio Spurs, but you also do so on the same night that the Miami Heat finally snap their losing streak. It's a good day for the tank. It was not, however, a good day for basketball if you are a Toronto Raptor fan, because the Toronto Raptors got smoked by the San Antonio Spurs, who were without Victor Wembanyama, who is shut down for the season, and were without De'Aaron Fox, who is also shut down for the season. But if you've been paying attention to the San Antonio Spurs, you knew this was in the realm of possibilities. Couple of compounding factors. Factor number one, the Toronto Raptors were coming off of a Western Conference road trip, a fact that Matt Devlin mentioned no less than 13 different times during this broadcast. Yes, when you go from the West Coast to the East Coast, it is a really major adjustment. And, the Raptors have been back for 2 days. And yeah, they got smoked. I think it was 7-6 in the first quarter. And then they got smoked every bit of the rest of the way through. This game was not close. They end up losing by over 30 points. And, it really came down to Devin Vassell, right? His shot making was incredible. And it came down to, I want to say Julian Champagny. I think Julian Champagny was incredible. Keldon Johnson was good. Harrison Barnes made some plays. It was just a combined team effort, and the Raptors did themselves no favors with their defense. And honestly, I don't care. I'll be honest. I don't mean to seem like a passionless Raptor fan, but I really don't care. The results of these games don't matter very much to me. The process, however, does matter to me. And remember those compounding factors? Here's a compounding factor. The San Antonio Spurs over the last 10 games are the number one rated offense in the NBA. This is called March basketball. It doesn't really matter. It's weird. And I was surprised as hell when I saw the San Antonio Spurs beat the shit out of the New York Knicks. I didn't expect that to happen, but it happened. And now the San Antonio Spurs come into Toronto for what feels like the second time and smoke the Raptors in what feels like a very surprising game. Now, the Raptors, of course, last year went into San Antonio early into rookie Victor Wembanyama's, rookie season. And there was that big Scotty Barnes game that we made a video about. And then, of course, when the San Antonio Spurs came to Toronto, that was the 10 block game. Ironically, the game that Vince and I went to, and we sat courtside to watch Victor Wembanyama have 10 blocks against the Toronto Raptors. And that was the game that the media basically turned on Scotty for leaving the game 3 seconds early, if you remember. Well, Scotty Barnes did not leave the court 3 seconds early or 2 seconds early or 3 minutes early tonight. Scotty had a pretty okay game. Not a great game. Not a great game. Don't let the box score fool you. He was not as impactful as he usually is defensively, and the turnovers were a bit of a concern. Scotty had 6 turnovers. RJ had 6 turnovers. Let's take a look at the box score. We'll look at a few select plays, but we're going to talk a little bit of March Madness because there is a certain big man that a lot of Raptor fans are very excited about who just made a really huge play for the Maryland Terrapins, which knocks them into the Sweet 16. And we're going to definitely look at that play because it was really awesome. Okay, the Toronto Raptors. Whew. Keep going. 123 to 89. My goodness. The Raptors did not manage to win a single quarter in this game. They managed to not lose the fourth quarter, but they didn't win a single quarter in this game. They got smoked 36 to 16 in the first quarter, and this game was basically over at about the 6-minute mark of the first quarter. If you are one of the people who ended up going to this game, I was supposed to go to this game. Vince and I were supposed to go to this game. Luckily, Vince told me 2-3 hours before the game or 4 hours before the game, he can't make it. Can we pick a game in April? I'm going to be honest, the game in April is probably going to be rough, but I don't think it's going to be rougher than this. So thank you, God, that I did not have to go and spend 6 hours or 5 hours to go watch this game. But I will tell you, 22 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists for Scotty Barnes on 8 for 11 shooting. They ended up, I think, if I'm not mistaken, someone correct me if I'm wrong, they converted one of his threes to a 2 because I thought at one point that he was 4 for 7 from 3, but I could be wrong. Anyways, 22, 6, and 6 is nothing to sneeze at. 8 for 11 is pretty good process. RJ Barrett was back. Jamal Shed got the start in place of the resting Jacoby Walter. Colin Castleton starts in the place of the resting Jakob Poeltl, and of course, no BI. You do have, Ochai Abaji back for another game, 1 for 8. He was awful. In 30 minutes, he managed 2 points. Just really tough game from him. And Jacoby Walters did come off the bench. The rust showed, but a negative 29 for Jacoby, a negative 31 for Orlando Robinson, a negative 31 for Jonathan Mogbo, who really struggles just with turnovers and sloppiness with the basketball, catching the basketball. It seems like the mask is really bothering him. Did I say something else? I feel like once in every single episode, I either say a name that I don't mean to say, and then I go back. John K saying Walter is trash. Let me say this respectfully. You are trash. Calling a 19-year-old coming off of an injury trash because he's 3 for 12 in a game is just, it's the epitome of stupidity. And honestly, I expect no less. I expect no less from you. I've read your comments for a while. Honestly, whatever, man. It's cool. Jamal Shed starts out on fire, ends up really cold from the field the rest of the way through. 2 for 8 from 3. He kept taking them. You do appreciate that. You expect and here's a really fun fact. Really, did I say Jacoby was resting? My bad. So Emmanuel Quickley, in place of the resting Emmanuel Quickley, Jacoby Walter was back. Okay. Yes, Jamal Shed, 8 3-pointers attempted. This is progress. I'm going to say this is progress. He didn't attempt 8 3-pointers, I don't think, in a single game for Houston in his entire career. He's not a high volume 3-point shooter, but it is worth noting that over the last 5 games coming into this game, Jamal Shed was shooting over 40% from 3. So it's small chunk size pieces, right? You just gotta, you gotta measure progress in small pieces. Of course, Jamison Battle struggles in this game. 5 points on 1 for 8 shooting. Really tough. Just a really tough shooting night all around. I mean, if you look at like RJ, Scotty, and Jamal, you're north of like almost 60% between those 3 guys. And then you go to the rest of the roster and you're below 25%. And it's just, oof, it's tough, right? But not easy to come back off of an injury the way Jacoby Walter is. So, kudos to him. He was really cooking before he got hurt. So hopefully he'll round back into form and give Raptor fans, a glimpse of the future and get something excited about. Obviously, we're all looking for the young players, right? And all these players are young players. There's not a single player playing for the Raptors other than Garrett Temple, who's old. How old are these players, you might ask? Scotty is 23. Castleton is 24. RJ is 24 or 25. Ochai is 24 or 25. Jamal Shed is 23. Jamison Battle's 23. Jonathan Mogbo's 23. Garrett Temple is 150 years old. Orlando Robinson is, I think, 25. Jacoby is 20. I mean, shit. Like, you're a really young team. So any one of these guys pop off, it's probably a good thing. Take a look at the team stats here. Again, a work in progress, but the Raptors get outshot by nearly 10% from the field. They managed to shoot 25.6% from 3-point range. Unbelievable. They don't get to the line very often, and that is just compounded by the fact that the Spurs got to the line 32 times. The Raptors fouled like crazy people. The Raptors don't break the 30 assist mark. They could barely score. Honestly, I mean, relatively speaking, they got 27 assists on 35 field goals. I would say that's a brilliant ratio. Brilliant ratio. On the other hand, it does seem like the San Antonio Spurs are playing beautiful basketball. They shared the basketball. They made the extra pass consistently. It really was like playing yourself in a way, like playing an idealized version of yourself. I just feel like Mel saying any injury update on Grady. No, I don't know. Ha ha ha. 150 is wild. Yeah. I mean, this was just a crazy game. It was just crazy. And you know what? John Calipari had this quote the other day. I was listening to Arkansas coach John Calipari, and he was talking about, that there's certain games that you just don't watch. You don't watch them back. You burn the tape. I promise you, this is not a game that I'm going back to watch in slow motion or whatever. I don't care. This is a game where the Raptors clearly did not bring it. They got punched in the face. They did not respond well. So, we can take a look at some of the tape on this game, and then we can just flush it from our memories. And, if you're some small-minded, feeble-minded person who's out there saying, Rob, how can the Raptors ever be good if they have games like this? This is March basketball. Okay. That's all I'll say to you. This is March basketball and it doesn't count. I don't know what else to tell you. Okay. You're playing some abysmal lineups out there. The spacing is atrocious. You're trying weird things. And honestly, this is not an indication of who the Raptors will be next year. This is not an indication of who the San Antonio Spurs will be next year. Okay. So here, I do want to, give a shout out to Angel Reese. Happy, happy International Women's Month. I'm a big Angel Reese fan. To those of you who know me, you know that. So here, I said that if Angel Reese did this, y'all would be talking about it for a week. But everyone loves to point out a clip like this in the WNBA to be like, this is why the WNBA is trash. Well, this happened in an NBA game. 4 point blank layups, missed. And that's how you get to shooting the abysmal percentage that the Raptors shot. Here, a little bit of a positive sign tonight for Scotty Barnes, who's been struggling immensely from three all year long. Looked very comfortable tonight, just getting them up. And hopefully, we can see a few more of these go down. Really just, again, comfortable, solid, not overly contested, but a contested look. Harrison Barnes did offer a late contest on that one. It wasn't like one of those dare shots or wide open. Now here, look, I was very complimentary of RJ Barrett yesterday. I put his stats side by side next to Jaylen Brown, and I said, hey, come on, what's the big difference between these two guys? And then RJ Barrett proceeded to do some shit that Jaylen Brown does very often, which is specifically that, I'm not a fan of black holes. Okay. One of my biggest pet peeves with RJ Barrett is that once, twice, 3 times a quarter, he makes up his mind. This is my possession. This is what I'm going to do on this possession. And it doesn't matter what else opens up on the court. He's going to miss it. Here, Scotty has a rookie sealed underneath the basket. There's no help. You need to make this pass right here. You don't make this pass, and then you end up, because you're seeing, like, RJ is just, he sees what is right in front of him, which is he sees Chris Paul. And he's like, okay, I could make this pass to Scotty Barnes for an easy layup, right? This is not a difficult pass. There's no help there. It's impossible for a rookie to stop a 6'8" Scotty Barnes in the paint when he's got him so clearly sealed and he has inside position and there's no help. Now, what's going to complicate this is Jamal Shed is going to cut through and bring his defender in, which of course is compounded by the fact that RJ didn't throw this pass. Now, Scotty wisely is going to get out of the way, and you could just see his body language. He's just like, come on, man. I ran down the court. I beat my man. I sealed my man. And because you're running point, you're not going to fucking find me. And then you're going to make this bullshit ass play against Chris Paul, which is like, okay, cool. Congratulations. It resulted in Chris Paul fouling him, but you don't give up those easy opportunities in transition when you're starving to score. Now, again, Scotty Barnes taking those Kawhi Leonard comparisons to heart with a little bounce on the soft rim, same rim that Kawhi hit that magical Game 7 shot against Philly. Here, I say, welcome back, Jacoby Walter. Really tough night shooting, but this was one of his 2 made 3-pointers tonight. And here we go, a little bit more RJ Barrett. This is one of the weirdest plays I think I've ever seen. Okay, now, he tried to make this pass. If you slow this down, it's very clear that he was trying to make this pass to Jonathan Mogbo. Unfortunately, it bumps off the Spurs player, bumps off Orlando Robinson, bumps off of Devin Vassell, and results in 1, 2, wide open. That should make Shackton a fool, because it's pretty awesome to bounce a basketball off a player, off your own player, off the other player, and then it results in that. I honestly, when I saw that, I couldn't stop laughing. I could not stop laughing. Now, let's rewind this. You see that guy in the corner? That's your man, RJ Barrett. You see that basketball? That's not your man. You see when that basketball goes up, you have a responsibility to box out your fucking man. And your man knows that you're a lazy ass defender and you're not going to box out your man. So here's what's going to happen. And I swear to God, when I saw Julian Champagny in the corner and I saw RJ Barrett turn his back on him, I was like, I screamed it out loud, offensive rebound, Julian Champagny. I knew this was happening, and this is how you ended a quarter. Giving a wide open dunk on a putback, which is so deflating for your defense. I don't give a shit how many points RJ Barrett had tonight. You are not going to convince me he played good basketball today. Just, you know, like, and again, he's also coming back from extended rest or whatever. I don't know if there was an injury that I should be aware of that maybe was hampering him. But once again, he has games like this all season. People don't seem to care about it because the box score numbers are always decent. But it's like, if you're going to give up 2 points like that, then I'm going to need you to be like a generational offensive player. Like, you can't be this sorry defensively and not be an A-plus offensive player and still keep your spot on the roster. You just can't. Like, you're not like RJ's been shooting north of 35% consistently all year. So I'm not saying the spacing is a horrible issue, but it's also worth noting spacing is not a huge plus. At 35%, you're barely ever guarded. So yeah, it's a huge step up from Scotty Barnes, who's shooting like 27% from three, but it's not a positive. You're not being guarded like Malik Beasley. You're not being guarded like Tim Hardaway Jr. You're not being guarded by like KCP. You're not even being guarded by like Devin Vassell. So again, like the volume is just, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you see the talent with RJ and you see the progression. And then once in a while, you see a game like this. You know, I've been very complimentary of RJ making more of an effort defensively, but it's like games like this where you have lapses like this and your team is already down 20, 25 points and you're a huge part of it. You're a huge part of it. Your ball dominance is a part of it. Your defense is a part of it. And you're getting cooked routinely, right? Ochai got cooked routinely tonight, you know, just really messy. Here, really good move by Scotty. It just kind of surprised me with that explosiveness. Boom. Nice little spin here. And then, you know, I've been a little bit critical of Scotty that he doesn't go up strong enough sometimes on these finishes. He went through a pretty much a 45 game stretch in the season early where I thought his finishing was drastically improved. Then he went through this entire stretch, like mid-January onward, where it's like he couldn't score around the basket anymore. He was missing bunnies. He was floating away from contact, foul baiting. And now it's just like I'm seeing him the last couple of games just go up strong. And I'm like, thank God this is bad. I had a feeling it had to do with injuries. I think this proves it. He looks healthier. He looks a little burstier. He looks a little bit, you know, quicker footed, you know, if that makes sense, defensively and offensively. And I think it's really positively impacting his scoring around the rim. Here, he's going to flush it. And hey, man, how many times did we see this shit in his rookie season, right? And we just haven't seen as much explosiveness lately. So yeah, okay, done with that. Okay, it was an awful game. Flush it from your memory. Little known fact. I don't know why it's not talked about enough. Angel Reese is part of a very, very elite basketball family. Her mother was a basketball player. Her brother, who currently, you know, pretty much saved Maryland's season tonight with a huge offensive rebound with about 25 seconds to go or 20 seconds ago. He is a basketball player who is draft eligible and may be a target for the Raptors in the undrafted heap. And also her cousin is Jordan Hawkins. Dude, like basketball genes. Holy shit. Here is the final play for Derik Queen. It is an incredible play. Again, huge play on the other end by Nick Clifford, finding a pass, skip pass to the opposite wing for a three-pointer. Derik Queen closes out late. None of Reese's family taught her how to dribble. Not Donald Fagen. I bet you anything Angel Reese would beat you 500 to nothing in a basketball game. And then you'd be like, "Oh, I thought she couldn't dribble." Okay. Sorry. I get touchy about Angel Reese criticism. Sorry. It's a little bit like Scotty Barnes criticism. It just annoys the living shit out of me. Okay. So, here we go. This play designed, you know, there was a lot of talk about who's it going to go to, who is this basketball going to go to, and in my head, I'm like, I hope it goes to Derik Queen. You know, I think he has the foot speed. I've compared him to a taller RJ Barrett. Now, some people find that to be a very weird, you know, comparison for a big man who's 6'10, but he does RJ Barrett shit. And ironically, On this play, I feel like he did exactly what RJ Barrett would do on this play, except he's 6'10", 250. Right? Look at this play. That's a wing, doesn't foot speed, one step, two step, elevates and finds that soft touch. That was huge. That was huge. That was such an onions play, man, with the game on the line, season on the line, Sweet 16 on the line. To make that play is so incredible. It does not mean that I don't see all the issues with Derik Queen. Trust me, I do. Defensively, guarding in space, the complications of guarding at the NBA level. There's a lot of questions that the Raptors will have to answer if they consider drafting Derik Queen. He did hit 2 3-pointers tonight, which is good, right? There has been some progression, some positive progression there. He's a really good free throw shooter, or a decent free throw shooter for a big. That's some positive, encouraging signs for them. If they believe that they can turn him into a stretch big, this might be too much talent to pass up on. I'm not going to lie. That might be just a little too much talent, man. And if Kaman is off the board, that's the best big available in this draft. And I don't think it's that close. I don't think it's that close. So defensive issues be damned. He is 20 years old, but the skill level of this guy, I feel like worst case scenario, you're getting Nas Reed, with the ball handling, the dribble manipulation, the playmaking, the passing, right? He's made some crazy, crazy passes this year. He's also made some crazy turnovers. He's a very error-prone player. But Shizzo Rambling saying Asa Newell is better. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if Asa Newell is better. There's some analytics that would say Newell is better, but a very different type of player. You got to look at shot creation as a value add at the NBA level, man. A guy who can get his own shot and create offense for others like this is more valuable than a Miles Turner type of hybrid wannabe. You know what I mean? Like you take. It's very rare for a role player archetype to usurp a star archetype. It's very rare. It means that the role player ended up in the 99th percentile and the star player ended up in the 60th percentile. You know what I mean? Like an example would be, man, let me think about this. A role player archetype that really ended up in star territory would be like Derek White, right? Derek White, Aaron Gordon, guys like that. Those are role players, clearly. Josh Hart, okay? So Miles Turner, right? So in order for a star to fall short of that role player, I mean, obviously the role player had to massively overperform and hit their 99th percentile outcome, but then the star player had to be like Killian Hayes level bad. You know what I mean? Like Norman Powell as a role player, I don't really think he's a role player archetype. You could argue he is a role player. I think that's I don't really think I don't think role player when I think Norman Powell, because so much of his offense is self-generated. And I understand that some people felt that Kawhi Leonard was a role player coming out of San Diego State, but I don't necessarily think he's a role player either. I mean, I saw a lot of star upside with Kawhi when I was watching his workouts back then. So, you know, again, like the mid-range was always a huge, huge weapon for him. Just because he was in a limited role for San Antonio doesn't mean I don't think he was a role player. It's the same thing with Andre Iguodala, right? I don't know. I think self-generation is the great sort of marker separator between role players and stars. And Derik Queen created that shot for himself, right? He creates a lot of offense for himself. He draws a lot of fouls for himself. He's not a lob merchant. He's not, he's not Daniel Gafford, right? He's not Isaiah Hartenstein even. So yeah, I mean he had a huge block in this game too. He had a couple of really good perimeter defensive possessions. He shuffles his feet well. He has decent lateral quickness. And what concerns me about him is mainly motor. Uh, Potentially being a little bit undersized at the 5, having to play him with a rim protecting 5, etc. But you know what? There's real all-star upside with this guy, and a play like this is really, really big time. Big time. Very curious to see what happens in the next round. There is another player very draft eligible, very much in the Raptors draft range tonight, today, who played, and he is going home, and that is Kasparas Jakucionis, also on his team, Tomislav Ivicic. So those, I don't think either one of them played very well. And I think with Kasparas, like from what I've seen, and I haven't watched the full game yet because I was doing the live and I was watching another game and I had to watch the Raptors game. So it's a little bit like, what the hell? I expected more from him. I expected more assertiveness from him. I don't think the defense is as big an issue as some people, presented in the chat, right? I agree with you. But Ivicic don't miss from three. Well, he missed quite a bit from three. I mean, look, I walk away from this game thinking that, oh my God. Sorry, hold on. Let me just pull up the box score real quick. Okay. So pull this off, pull this up. Give me 1 second here. How y'all doing? How's your March Madness going? Are you losing your minds the way I am? I mean, shit. Michigan State, thankfully, catching up here a little bit, but my God. Where are we? Okay. So, I mean, it's not really an upset. It was a pretty evenly matched thing. I mean, honestly, I think if you told me that Illinois beat Kentucky, I wouldn't have said that would be a huge upset. But yes, in terms of Kasparas Jakucionis, the 6 turnovers, a couple were really sloppy and showed really poor processing. 13 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. This is not the way that he wanted to end his season. I'm sure of it. And, losing to the Kentucky Wildcats, who don't really have like a really huge NBA player on the other end of it, but they are a good team. I don't know, man. This is tough. Like, you really don't want to lose like this, partially because I just feel like part of his problem wasn't just the turnovers or shooting 5 for 13 or just not shooting well. I think part of the problem is he's kind of been on a downward trend for about 3 months now. And so I do believe that Kasparas Jakucionis could fall all the way to the middle of the first round now. And that kind of sucks for the Raptors because I was really hoping that somebody would take him in the top 5, which would, peg someone down to the Raptors. This is always what you want, is you want your favorite prospects to struggle and you want your least favorite prospects to prosper. And it sounds a little bit backwards, but that's exactly true, right? Dylan Shoot with a super chat. Hang on, before I address the super chat, there was actually a super chat in the last live that I didn't get to. I tried to answer it after we went off air, but I just want to answer that really quickly because I don't want to ignore that, just in case he still wants the question answered. So this is the biggest $2 super chat in the history of the world. Let me just show y'all this. And this is, would you trade, Rank Scrub said, would you trade Gary plus the Portland second round for a first round pick? Okay, so let's pull this off. Would I trade? Yeah. Did I say Gary? I meant Grady. Okay, hang on. Would you trade Grady plus a Portland second for a first round pick? My answer to this is no, unless that first round pick is top 10 and a player that I really, really am high on has fallen to that spot. That player might be Kaman Malawach. That player might be Derik Queen. That player might be somebody else. That player might be who the next super chat pertains to, and that's Collin Murray-Boyles. So, hi, Rob. Do you think picking Collin Murray-Boyles would be a future fit problem for the lack of shooting and shot creation? So, to those who don't know, Collin Murray-Boyles, a little bit young for his class, last year, plays for the South Carolina, very, very physical defender, really good shot creator, good passer, very positionally versatile, has drawn a lot of comparisons to Draymond Green. It's basically like a one-man defensive wrecking crew with linebacker strength And, some people might say has some similarities to Scotty Barnes. Uh, Shot has not come around as one would have liked, but we can certainly take a look at CMB's, overall stats and see what that looks like. But yeah, it hasn't been good at all. Not for the eye test and not for anything else. Like it just has not been great. So if we're looking at his 2-point percentage, that's encouraging. 62% from two is very good. But his 3-point shooting percentage, I mean, he ended up taking one per game and he ended up hitting it at 26.5%. That's not great. Okay. And that's really not great. What is great, however, is 11.9 box plus minus is great. Okay. 5 defensive box plus minus is great. His positional versatility is incredible. His efficiency overall, which is to say how he uses his body, is great. His free throw rate is incredible. Okay. His rebounding is very good. Okay. Offensive rebounding fell down a little bit this year. And I would say his assist to turnover ratio is pretty decent for a guy who often plays without a lack of, with a little bit of a lack of spacing and not a hell of a lot of talent around him. I feel like he's the type of connected player that the better the players around him, the better he'll be. I see very few worlds in which CMB is not a 10 to 12-year pro. Plays with a lot of internal toughness. It's not something you can teach. Has very good size for the wing position. He moves his feet very well. He has pretty switchable hips. I love him as a defender. I think he's going to be a lockdown defender on day one. I think he's going to be one of the top 25 defenders by year two. And so, for a team that often struggles to guard multiple places, a team that often struggles to guard the pick and roll, struggles to guard at the rim. I mean, I'm not saying he's some massive shot blocker, but he's not a non-shot blocker. 2.6 blocks per 100 possessions, 2.9 steals per 100 possessions. I mean, this is a guy with a relentless defensive motor, and I love him. So, if the Raptors fall down to 8 or 9 and he's the best player on the board, you will not see me complaining at all. I really am a huge fan of CMB. I mean, one can argue that Ryan Dunn's learned to shoot didn't really learn to shoot and was just on a very strong heater to start the season. This happens with a lot of players for whom shooting is not natural. They go through a summer, they come back, they start shooting really well, and then, a couple months into it, it all just goes away. So MJAD saying if CMB never develops a three, is he even playable in the NBA? 100%. He is playable. He would probably be more of a big, though. And I think he can be a super connective post hub type of player who offers you 1 through 5 or at least 2 through 5 switchability at the next level. I think he can be a fantastic defender. I think the big swing skill obviously is, do you believe that he can be a shot creator off the dribble? Do you believe that he can be a standstill corner 3-point shooter? And, that all remains to be seen, and I can't tell you that I think the shot is like really great, like in terms of how it looks. But I do believe that he's young enough and has worked hard enough at that shot that, like I think we can get there. I think we can get there to the point where he's a 32% 3-point shooter. Jack Armstrong mentioned something very interesting during the broadcast, which I, seldom agree with Jack about anything, but I do agree with this, that the Raptors need spacing around Scotty Barnes in order to truly maximize him. And so, you look at a player like CMB and you say, are we doing that? Are we doing that? Are we moving in the right direction when it comes to shooting? Now, obviously, shooting is very, very well rewarded in terms of the draft, right? Players who can shoot like Con Knipple, players who can shoot like Liam McNeely, they're going to go higher because they can shoot. Shooting is not something that is overlooked at any level. And, it's interesting. You look at a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? Just do me a favor and look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. In fact, we'll look at the Cleveland Cavaliers together because you're going to be really surprised by what you find with the Cleveland Cavaliers in terms of their 3-point shooting. And it is actually pretty ridiculous. Let me show you what I mean. So every single Cavalier that plays actual minutes for this team, with the exception of Jared Allen, is a lights out 3-point shooter. Take a look at this. DeAndre Hunter, 48%. Greg Porter, 45%. Javonte Green, 44%. Ty Jerome, 42%. By the way, I think the Raptors should make a run at Ty Jerome this offseason. Not that notwithstanding. Darius Garland, 40.7%. Karis LeVert, who is no longer there, 40.5%. George Niang, 40%. Max Strus, 38.7%. Evan Mobley, 38%. Isaac Okoro, 37.5%. Donovan Mitchell, 37%. Sam Merrill, one of the best three-point shooters in the league, at 36.6%. Dean Wade at 35.8%. And Jalen Tyson, the rookie, at 33.3%. The only players who don't shoot threes are Luke Travers, Naquan Tomlin, who have played a combined 12 games in garbage time pretty much, Tristan Thompson, Jared Allen, and Imani Bates, who has played 7 games. So basically, if you can't shoot threes, you can't play for the Cavaliers unless your name is Jared Allen or Tristan Thompson. Now, here's what's really interesting. Let's take a look at the Toronto Raptors, shall we? Just keep those numbers in mind, okay? These are the Toronto Raptors shooting percentages on threes. Hang on. Cover your eyes. So what was the high mark? It was about 35%, right? Okay. So let's say 35% is the cutoff. These are the Raptors that shoot above 35%. Kelly Olynyk, no longer with the team. Jamison Battle, 2-way contract. Ochai Agbaji. He was much higher, but he's come down to earth, especially after tonight. He'll probably be at 39%. Emmanuel Quickley, 37%. Chris Boucher, who isn't playing anymore, 36%, is probably not going to be on the team. RJ Barrett, low volume, but 35.9%. Davion Mitchell, not on the team anymore, 35.9%. AJ Lawson, 2-way guy, 35.4%. Grady Dick, 35%. Okay, here's all the guys that play major minutes for you who aren't shooting 35%. And by the way, I think league average is close to 37%. So even Chris Boucher is below league average right now. Jamal Shed, 34%. This is considered progress, okay? Jakob Poeltl at 33%, which is hilarious. He's made, I think, 2 threes this season, but nevertheless. Jacoby Walter, 31%. Jared Roden, 30.8%. Bruce Brown, who played a ton of games, 18 games for the Raptors, at 30.6%. Jonathan Mogbo at 29.8%. Orlando Robinson at 26.9%. Scotty Barnes at 26.7%. Colin Castleton at 25%. Garrett Temple at 25%. DJ Carton did not really play very many minutes. Bruno Fernando did play, 17 games for the Raptors. He does not attempt threes. Do you understand how bad this team is at shooting? Because it is fucking ridiculous. It should be a crime against humanity how bad the Raptors are at shooting threes. Now, is this because they don't have three-point shooting? Not necessarily. Jamison Battle is a really good three-point shooter. Kelly Olynyk was a great three-point shooter. Ochai Agbaji has shown great upside, going right back to Kansas of being a good three-point shooter. Grady Dick, reputationally, is a great three-point shooter. Davion Mitchell, ironically, is actually shooting close to 39% from 3 now on the season, so he's been really solid from 3. RJ Barrett is progressing slowly all the way back to last year with his time with the Raptors. He shot nearly 40%. Chris Boucher probably not going to be with the team. Emmanuel Quickley, I don't think he's going to shoot this poorly next season. So, okay. But in terms of volume, in terms of actual volume, right? These are your top guys per 100 possessions. Jamison Battle, 12.4%. That is elite per 100%. These are your high volume three-point shooters. Okay? That's what you need. You need more of these guys. You need more AJ Lawsons, more Jamison Battles, more Emmanuel Quickleys. You need more guys who take it at a high volume. Grady Dick, that volume needs to go up. 9.9 is not enough, right? Scotty Barnes over here, 6.3. Some people want that volume to go down. Hell no. I want it to be closer to 9. And obviously, I want that number, 26.7, to trend much closer to like 32, 33%. It'd be great if you could shoot 33% next year on 8 attempts per 100. I'll be perfectly happy with that. Obviously, Jacoby Walter has some solid shooting chops. Jamal Shed is really progressing as a shooter. We've seen some potential from, Jonathan Mogbo, who is not a high-volume three-point shooter by any means. But the Raptors need to address this. The Raptors need to get better at this. One player who can make you immediately better at this is the player that I wanted to trade for last offseason, which is Cam Johnson. And, I really keep thinking about the Brooklyn Nets as a great trade partner for the Toronto Raptors in general, and I just think it would be fantastic. There's so many players on the team that I like, especially in the front court positions. Guys like Nick Claxton, guys like Day'Ron Sharpe, There's a lot. Okay. So I would love to do that. Jackson Ingram is not on here. That is fair. And honestly, in a more off ball role, Brandon Ingram has had some good 3-point shooting seasons. But let's take a look at where Mr. Ingram has been lately. Okay. So Brandon Ingram over the last few years, 37.4% this year, 35.5% last year, 39% the year before, 32.7 the year before, 38, 39. So if we factor in the last 6 years, okay, 305 games, he is shooting 37%, which is above league average on per 100 possessions, 7 attempts per game. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not speaking for Darko when I say this. I will guarantee you that he is going to try to get that number up to 10. That is going to be the 100% thing where Brandon Ingram, we need you to get 10 attempts per 100. And Ingram is probably going to oblige because everybody obliges with Darko. And so, yeah, that'll be a huge thing. If Brandon Ingram can take a huge step as a shooter next year, I think it'll be a major, major, major value add for the Raptors. It's also worth noting that BI this year was a negative 0.3 box plus minus, which is not good and is the first time that he's had negative box plus minus since he became an all-star. So you really, really hope that that 18 game sample size is not a sign of things to come, because the other stat that you would say went down this year is that PER. I hate PER as a stat, but it's the first time Brandon Ingram has even come close to league average PER, which is 15. And again, you just hope, again, I am just being cautious because I was very excited when we got Otto Porter and I was like, oh my God, we got Otto Porter. I love Otto Porter. And then I realized, shit, Otto Porter is fucking washed. Injuries injuries can ruin careers in ways we don't realize. Multiple repeat injuries year after year after year can really, really damage a player. I was excited when we got Emmanuel quickly last year. He has been disappointing as hell. So, you know what? I'm realizing players are not always who they were at the previous stop. Now, it's also worth noting, I was pretty excited about us getting Ochai Agbaji when we got him. He played like ass. This year, he's had a big turnaround. I want to believe that in a winning context, that things do change. And I do want to end this live off when talking about that. So, what happened with the Golden State Warriors when they made a trade for Steph Curry? When they made a trade for Jimmy Butler, is Steph Curry and Draymond Green took a look at each other in the locker room, per a source, and said, "I guess we're going for it." And suddenly everything changed. Jimmy Butler has not been great by any means for the Golden State Warriors. What has changed is the organizational focus, the organizational belief. What happened when the Toronto Raptors made a trade for Kawhi Leonard? Okay, obviously, a lot of people were shaken up. DeMar was a franchise legend. A lot of people were really upset, specifically Kyle Lowry, who was very much, felt betrayed that his best friend had been traded. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan was very pissed off. But ultimately, when the dust settled, and they looked around at that team and they looked at Kawhi and they looked at, what they had in that locker room and they felt, a couple games in, they looked around and said, shit, we actually have a chance. And that's where Kawhi Leonard recounted later. He went up to Kyle Lowry and said, look, I know your buddy got traded, but we have a chance to do something special here. Now, look, internally, when you look around and you see a coach saying 4 rookies are going to get major rotation minutes, or 3 to 4 rookies are going to get major rotation minutes, we're not using our mid-level exception. We're playing this very aggressive style of trap defense, which is meant to develop some reps. We're going to consistently, play defensively challenged lineups. We're going to play, Scotty Barnes with the bench, and we're going to try to get reps through this. Late game, we're going to try wild shit. Scotty, you're going to take 10 threes, even if you're missing them all, and all this stuff, and we're going to have all these injuries. I feel like internally the belief starts to go down, 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 and while you can try to be professional in a situation like this, you could certainly be professional and you can continue to dial up defensively. That internal belief of what are we playing for? What are we doing here? That just sort of goes away. And I'm not saying that gives players carte blanche or, an excuse to mail it in. But I do think that when you're playing for something, when you're playing for each other, when you're playing for a playoff spot, when you're playing with the belief that you could advance in the playoffs, you play differently. You play with a different sense of urgency. You play with a different level of maturity and seriousness. And I do believe that Brandon Ingram changes, at least internally, the focus and belief of this team about what they believe they can be in this league going forward. And I do believe that a high lottery pick would also help with that tremendously. I do believe some roster moves and some roster reshuffling to get some veterans in the door, players like Malik Beasley, players like Tim Hardaway Jr., players like Isaiah Stewart. Again, look, I'm not saying Tobias Harris, whatever. These are pros, okay? Whether you want to admit it or not, they are massive upgrades over Malachi Flynn, Killian Hayes, and whoever the hell else was playing for the Detroit Pistons last year. And so these are the players that you win with. Obviously, you focus on youth and development, and Cade has to get better. Jaden Ivey has to get better. Isaiah Stewart has to get better. Jalen Duren has to get better. Asar Thompson has to get better. Ron Holland has to get better. But at some point, those grown-ups that come in the door, those adults, those shooters, those defenders, those guys really elevate the tide. And then it matters that, you have a guy who can get you 25, 27 points. I do believe Scotty can be a much better scorer than y'all give him credit for. I really do. I'll fight it till I'm blue in the face that I have seen, a lot of tape of this guy working on the offseason, working on these one-on-one moves. And we've seen it in games. We've seen games like this and the last game where he's very bursty. He's got a more fluid handle. He's smoother with his, release and stuff. We saw plenty of games this year where he was shooting north of 50, 55% in that mid-range spot. Then we've also seen, huge sums of games where, last season he was shooting 39% from three for 3 months. Then we've seen, a huge chunk of games this season where he was finishing at the rim like a beast. We've just never completely seen it together for a whole year. Let's hope next year is that year where he can put it all together. And, with winning as the focus, no distractions, no, whose team is this? No, is this guy gunning for a contract and whatever? Like, let's just forget all of that and let's just go all in. And I think that this team is really taking shape around him. I think this team marches to his orders in terms of defensive intensity. I think they're selfless because he's selfless. I think they're selfless because they bought into Darko basketball. And I do believe this is a fun style of basketball that is going to make everybody look better. Okay. And it helps to make people look better when you don't have a full roster and you're looking to trade players, right? Because right now, RJ Barrett versus, Jaylen Brown, you can make an argument. You can make an argument for RJ Barrett. You really could. And 2 years ago, you couldn't, right? You really couldn't. So, analytically, aesthetically, developmentally, whatever you want to say, the Raptors are getting better, but they're losing games. They're losing a ton of games close. They're losing a ton of games late. And I do believe that you'll flip the tide next year when you're no longer tanking. Oh, Lord, that ain't happening. It's not happening, right? I agree. It might have just been one. I apologize. Or it could have been two. I mean, look, there will be a lot of players who will be available. I think the Raptors need to find a way to get 3-pointers from from that center spot. And I think one player who could really do that is a guy who shoots consistently close to 40% from three, and that's Naz Reid. I think the Raptors should do and would do anything to get Naz Reid on this roster. I think he would help tremendously. But we'll see. We'll see. Is this in regards to Collin Murray-Boyles? I do think he's very different, but you know what? I think Jonathan Mogbo is such an interesting case because, earlier in the season, I legitimately felt he was one of the 5 to 7 best rookies in the class. And lately he has looked like the 35th to 40th best rookie in the class. You can make an argument that what he was earlier might be closer to who he actually is because that probably makes you feel better. But, what he's doing right now has to count for something, right? And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think that the mask is really bothering him. He looks like a person who's really struggling with depth perception. He threw that pass like 6 feet clear of his target today. And I was just like, whoa, like that must be so uncomfortable for him. I've played with a visor for developmental purposes before. I can tell you it pretty much accomplishes the same thing. It sort of cuts off, your sight line below your eyes. And it really changes the fact that you can't really see your hands. And for a player who's already got a lot of, concerns shooting the basketball, to screw up with your depth perception is really going to mess you up, right? So I don't know. I think the mask is probably hurting him. I think the mask hurt Scotty to some extent, and I definitely the goggles, the mask, whatever. And I definitely think that I think the mask is probably hurting Jameson Battle as well. But nevertheless, I keep continue to make excuses for my team struggling. We need a center or a point guard. Uh, would you sign Nas Reed, trade RJ and somebody else for salary for Jaden McDaniels, championship contenders? I don't know how that's possible. Are you suggesting trading RJ and somebody else? Okay. Sign Nas Reed. Okay, we can't sign Nas Reed outright because we don't have cap space. So first and foremost, that ain't happening. The Nas Reed signing would have to be a sign and trade. The problem with sign and trade is that the other team does not want salary and you have nothing but salary. So I actually end up thinking that Nas Reed probably ends up on Detroit, which is a really scary thought if you're a Raptor fan. So yeah, McDaniels is expensive too. I don't find him to be that expensive, and I actually think he has a little bit more offensively than people give him credit for, or at least I've given him credit for. So that's worth noting too. I think Miles Turner is totally priced out of our range unless we're, doing a huge sign and trade. And again, it really comes down to what is the incentive for the other team to do this, right? So, for instance, when the Raptors facilitated a sign and trade with the Miami Heat, there was an incentive, which is that we wanted to help Kyle get to his destination. And we also wanted that Precious Achua, piece of the puzzle, which of course, was a total stupid play. Y'all realize how much people in the city ripped Goran Dragic for having higher aspirations, and we ended up trading him plus a first round pick for Thaddeus Young, who hated being here. That kind of burns me up a little bit because I guarantee you that the amount of animosity that people have towards Goran is not the energy they're going to keep towards Thad. And I'll tell you right now, I know this firsthand for years now. Years. I say this is firsthand knowledge. Goran Dragic loves Toronto. So it always really has bothered me when people talk shit about Goran, for real. RJ is a trade piece. Maybe. Mogbo can't finish at the rim. Yeah, that has been a pretty big issue all year. I think he's just really adjusting to the fact that, despite the wide shoulders, he is a little slight of frame. He's not very strong for, players his size. And honestly, all the angles change when you move up a conference and you move up into a division. Like there's a huge, huge, huge adjustment period going from the Mountain West Conference where he was. Uh, to now to playing in the NBA, especially like playing rotation minutes in the NBA, not just garbage time, not just G League minutes. And I'll be very curious to see if Jonathan Mogbo progresses in the summer. Raptors Summer League is going to be the most fun summer league we've probably seen in a really long time. Like we're going to have probably, hopefully, a top 7 pick. We're going to have Jacoby. We're going to have, Jamal Shed. We're going to have probably our second round pick. Like it should be really fun. Ulrich, right, is going to be a really big part of that. Jonathan Mogbo is going to be a really big part of that. Let's go for it, man. What % chance do you think the Raptors rookies are out of the league in the next 3 years? 0%. 0%. I think Jonathan Mogbo works way too hard to find himself out of the league. I think he's at minimum a 5-year pro. And Jamal Shed, it would take injuries to push him out of the league, man. I think he's really good. And Jameson Battle, I think he'll find a role at the end of somebody's bench for a very long time. And yes, I do. I really wish we could have taken Matas Buzelis. I was pretty high on him. I went up and down on him a couple times. I had him 4th on my board at some points. I had him 3rd on my board at some points. I was consistently higher on Nikola Topic and Reed Shepherd than him, but yeah, I got as high as 5, 4, 3 on him, and seeing him at 10, knowing that we had to trade the 8th overall pick and convey that 8th overall pick for Jakob Poeltl, it bothers me so much, especially because I think he's going to be fantastic. I think he's going to be really good, man. Agreed. Okay, guys. Enjoy your March Madness. I will remind you, to those of you who are fans of women's hoops, LSU, FSU tomorrow, USC also plays tomorrow, UConn also plays tomorrow. That's Paige Beckers. That's Juju Watkins. That's Flau'jae Johnson. There's going to be a lot of really, really good basketball tomorrow. I can't wait. The Toronto Raptors' next game is against the Washington Wizards. Let us pray that the Miami Heat continue to win. Let us pray that the Brooklyn Nets add on some wins. I do not think that the Philadelphia 76ers are going to win another game this season. So it looks like the Raptors are cooked in terms of, getting past, getting back to 5 or 6 or whatever. But at this point, I just want them to hold on to 7. I just want them to hold on to 7. And the team nipping at their heels is really the Miami Heat right now. It is worth noting, I mentioned this before, in the live before this, that the magic number was 5, which is to say the gap between the Raptors and the Heat was 5. After tonight, the gap is 6. I will take a look very briefly at the Tankathon odds just so y'all can put this into your caps and smoke it, and so that there's some good news to end this live and we end on a good note. The gap is literally 6. Miami Heat lose. The Raptors are on a 4-game losing streak. It is the longest losing streak. They have lost 4 straight. The Raptors have lost 4 straight. And tomorrow night, the Raptors go into Washington and attempt to extend their losing streak to 5. It will be the battle of tank number 1 versus tank number 2. I suspect tomorrow that somehow Washington will prevail, but let's pray they don't. The Raptors have already split, a pair of games against Boston. So, against Washington. So let's see if they can do that again. In terms of catching either of these teams, there's a 1-game gap between the Raptors in Brooklyn and the Raptors in Philadelphia. So in order to close that gap, the Raptors have to continue losing and pray that one of these two teams actually ends up winning a game at some point. I do want to say that I do not believe, and I have not believed for very, very, very many weeks now, that it would be ever possible for the Raptors, if the Nets and the Sixers decided to fully tear it down, which they clearly have. I did not think that it would be possible for the Raptors to out-tank them. I remain steadfast in that, but it's worth noting that the Raptors retain a 7.5% chance at Cooper Flag. And it's also worth noting that last year, Atlanta ended up getting Zachary Risacher with just a 4.5% chance. And it's also worth noting that the last time the Raptors finished 7th in the draft, they ended up moving up to 4th to grab Scotty Barnes. So again, at 7.5%, with the way the lottery works, I like our chances of at least moving up into the top 4. It should be all right. In worst case scenario, our odds of moving down are not significantly high. Although, if I'm a betting person, if we have the 7th best odds, the most likely outcome is we're going to draft 8th. So, actually, the most likely outcome in that situation, I believe mathematically, is that we're going to draft 7th, but my emotions say we're going to draft 8th. Point being, we'll draft somewhere between 2 and 8. Okay. And there seems to be a lot of talent in this draft that makes me feel very confident that the Raptors will find value somewhere between 2 and 8. Okay. Matthew Coombs saying the Sixers are on another level with the tank. I completely agree with you. They have completely committed to it. It doesn't matter if they're up 20, 25, 30, they will find a way to lose that game. And I got to tell you, the way the Raptors played tonight, you play Colin Castleton and Jonathan Mogbo, you might be unwinnable. Like, you might not ever win a basketball game again if you play those guys 30 to 40 minutes. No disrespect to Jonathan Mogbo. That's my guy. Love him. But him plus Colin Castleton is your tank formula. That's how you're going to lose games. You're going to lose all these games with those two guys because they can't shoot. They can't seem to score around the rim. You have terrible spacing when they're on the court. And Colin Castleton has at least 1 to 2 disastrous turnovers every single game. It's very loose with the basketball. And yeah, I mean, it's no disrespect. They're both good rebounders. They're both contributing. They're both working hard. It just doesn't seem to be possible to win games with both of them on the court. And it's worth noting that since Jonathan Mogbo's come back, we've been on a 4-game losing streak. So, you can talk shit all you want, but Jonathan Mogbo is literally saving your fucking season. All right. Okay. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great one. Welcome back, Jacoby Walter. Huge, to see him back. Really hope he can refine some of that beautiful, basketball that he was playing before he got out, because, he's a really big part of that future going forward. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye. And please hit like on this video and subscribe. We are, I think 2 subscribers away from hitting that 12,400 mark. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. It would help. Peace.